Hey everyone.
Right.
Hey,
All right, we'll probably go ahead and get started. Um, I just had a couple topics about V3 today. I know past couple weeks we've been talking about good first issues and kind of what we want to do with that. I don't know if Sophie or Hendrik, you guys had any more things you want to talk about related to that.
I,
Um,
I do, but maybe at the end.
yeah, that is what I would like to prefer. So I already seen what Sophie has prepared. I think it's good to share, but on the other hand, those meetings are normally the focus is on proposals, on technical content and that, and we now already used several of them for good first issues. What I like, and as said, I like to have it today too, but maybe we can do it as kind of time boxed and try to move forward the V3 topics today and because I think that is a high need we need to get progress on and in.
I agree. I don't want the presentation to take over like it did last time. But
Perfect.
it is
Thank
something
you.
that I'm spending a little time on. So, yeah, I would
What what what
those.
what do you assume? Like last 15 minutes or
Yeah,
what would
yeah,
make sense?
yeah, like yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
cool. Okay. So then let's do it like that we say the last 15 minutes are reserved for the good first issue topic. Yeah, that makes
okay.
sense.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, sorry, I usually end up just making this wiki page on the Friday before, so I will try to be better about making it sooner so that people can go in and add their topics in a more timely manner. So, yeah, okay, sounds good. So, the three topics I had today were we want to talk about mirror node, REST API support. Now this one is uh, we talked about this a little bit recently just because of the HIP 1261 that we've been working with the Mirror Node team. The kind of issue we had with that was trying to figure out if we were able to do that using a JRPC or a yeah gRPC API or a REST API. And we ultimately ended up going with REST because we wanted this to be able to be used in a browser environment, and browsers aren't able to, with the JavaScript SDK, use gRPC without a gRPC web proxy. So that's something that the team decided they didn't want to ultimately support. So we ended up going with the REST API. But then we also then there was also a discussion on if this was something that should even be supported in the SDK, just because the Mirror Node REST API supports Open API, and to my understanding, there are customers that can uh, generate their own, I guess, API sort of, or open API. I guess I don't know what the term would be, interface or usage. They basically just like generate the code like themselves. So this was something I thought would be interesting to talk about for V3. If this was something that we wanted to support and include in the SDKs, or if this was something that we want to leave more for, different users to kind of do themselves. Yeah, Hendrik.
Yeah, my point here is why, in first place, I think it's great to just provide an API that people can use. I know that at least in the Java world, it is quite complicated to provide an API that all people can easily use in their environment because in Java, things like Spring Boot have their own HTTP REST client APIs. Others like Jakarta have it. Then there is a plain one which is part of the OpenJDK. Then there is the Apache HTTP client. Then there is OK HTTP. And when looking at OpenAPI and I think it's is it from Swagger? I think it's from Swagger, this tooling to create code out of an open API spec. For Java, you have so many different classifications, like, hey, use it based on this dependency, use it based on that dependency, that my gut feeling is for Java, you can just do it wrong. Um, on the other hand, I see a lot of other libraries where REST is the only way to communicate with the server infrastructure. They just do exactly that and provide one preferred way to use it, which then maybe add some HTTP dependencies that a project without that would not have. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I like the idea to provide it, but I see that this can end in new dependencies and things like that, where I ask myself, is it worth that against people can easily create it on their own?
Yeah, I guess would there be a way to I guess in this job example, like for people to maybe like choose like what dependency they use, like if they're already using like a certain library for to do like REST API queries, like would there be a way for them to choose like, oh, like SDK could use this one or that one, like uh uh and then have it choose like based on that, like would that be possible?
Yeah, sadly, it's not a UI, right? So it's what Swagger provides for code generation based on REST endpoints is a CLI. So it's called Swagger Code Gen. I think that is the thing that most people use to create something like that. And that is not an editor or something. That is a CLI. And with
Hmm.
that, it makes it a little bit more complex because you need to go, I'm just searching for it, into the documentation and see like, oh, what are the current different, and I do not know how they call it, like configurations or patterns that are supported, and which one do I want to use? Because for Java, it's even a difference if you say I want to have it on Android or I want to have it on a Java core app, you know? Even,
Hmm.
even there you have a difference. Um, give me a second, then I think I have. Oh, here we go. How can I link to that? So if you open this link I just sent you, and scroll down to supported languages and frameworks. Here we go. So here you see, like, oh yeah, there is Go, there is I assume somewhere Java or whatever. And then you have server stubs. And server stubs you see like, oh, Spring has their own, Java Micronaut has their own, Kotlin has their own. Um, so maybe this is Java specific, but when looking at those server stubs, there are several ones that would work for Java. Um, I don't know how that is done in other languages, like in Python, in Go, in TypeScript. I assume for TypeScript, it's a big difference if you use like React or if you use Angular or if you use just the plain fetch API coming from JavaScript, as an example.
Hmm. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
we'd almost kind of want it to like dynamically generate something like based on what the user would need it for, like whatever their use case is.
Yeah, I think there are two ways. So one way is we just decide for each language that is the one we say is the one we support and we provide, um,
Hmm.
which might work. In maybe in some languages there is just one option and that in other languages maybe you have five. And the problem is if we couple the clients, like client for mirror node and client for consensus node, as an example, together as one SDK or as one library, and you say, yeah, this is useless for me because I need something that is based on, as an example, the Android HTTP client. So I cannot use the other Java stuff. Then you get dependencies that are useless for you, you know? So,
Hmm.
which is not good. I think here we need to do an analysis what it looks like for the different languages and what would make sense and what not. The other way we could do it is for each language, give a preferred way how you can do it and create very good um, teaching material about it. Like video about, hey, how can you use, as an example, Swagger Code Gen to create based on a given mirror node endpoint um, something that is based on the Go server stub in Go, so that in your Go application you can directly communicate with a mirror node server. I assume that could be a better way, at least for the start, because if we have that, creating our own library is still possible. And it would help us with other points, like, for example, versioning. Because today we do not have, or maybe I'm wrong and we now have it, but we do not have like exact same versions for mirror node and for consensus node, right? It's more like, oh, that version on consensus node uses that protobuf from, no, that version of mirror node uses that protobuf of consensus node, so it's compatible with that. If
Hmm.
you have your own network where you set up a consensus node and a mirror node, and we just have one SDK, do we say that SDK is compatible with consensus node version X? Do we add a version for mirror node? All those questions come up if we include that in our code. make sense? Like that those are things to discuss?
Yeah, I think I follow. So you're basically saying that if we can use this kind of Swagger code gen to generate specific code for specific like mirror node versions, and be able to like kind of track it that way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm saying is, since this tool exists, maybe it don't make sense to say here we provide our own API on top of mirror node because you can just use this one to create it. Maybe what we do is just run this tool and provide even some like vanilla builds based on that tool, but we do not change them at all, right? This is then vanilla created ones where we say, hey, look, this is based on this tool. You can use the tool too. If you want to have some, just do it like this and this and this. Um, but this would, especially in the first step, it would be 100% separated from what we call SDKs today.
Oh, okay. So we wouldn't necessarily provide like REST API functionality in the SDK, but we would provide directions on how to do that.
Yeah,
Use
at the beginning, I mean,
yeah.
maybe we see that nobody cares, and for everybody, it's okay if we use variant 7, whatever variant 7 is, and
Hmm.
then we can do it like that. But we are not at the point where we could decide that. So, what I
Yeah.
think would make sense, sorry for not painting on your screen, if that is our current SDK, right? That is what we have today and where we currently work on version 3. And parallel to that, we have a REST stub. And if you want both, we have this nice facade on top that we provide that includes everything and has just some minimalistic clue code. Maybe that would be a solution. What I think is very important that this one do not depend now on any REST stuff, on any mirror node stuff, because what we have here is the consensus node SDK. And for the current state, I think it's a must to keep that separated because we now starting to discuss what do we want to do in version 3. What have we learned over the last years that we want to bring forward to create a solid SDK? But everything we learned is only about consensus node. We have learned nothing about mirror node. So we need this split and say, hey, we now move the consensus SDKs where we're all working on in a very, very solid state. And what we are doing here, oh, we now give it a try and start something. And maybe in 4 years, we see, yeah, that was not the right thing. Everybody wants something else. And then we create something else. And maybe then those two things are even like bundled together or whatever. When we know this is enterprise ready, we know what the people assume from a mirror node client. The other thing is when it comes to mirror node clients, um, in theory, the mirror node can have gRPC endpoints. And another question I would like to ask is, can we talk with the mirror node people so that what they provide for REST is even provided for gRPC too, because then, excluding now the JavaScript client, because that is always special, we could say, oh, we do not take care about REST, but for the other SDKs, we provide, like we do it today for consensus node, gRPC based connections and put an API layer on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the SDK today currently, like we do have some mirror node usage. So like Uh, so like we added recently, like there are like some new like mirror node contracts, like gas estimation queries. The simple fees will be added here soon. We use like the topic message like gRPC endpoint as well. And also the address book. So the address book is pretty like integrated like in
Yeah, yeah.
our execution like kind of pipeline. So like this is actually something we just did. So if we now if the consensus node returns an invalid node account error, then we query the address book immediately and update our network because invalid node accounts like something like got off, like there's a node account being used that isn't recognized in the client's
Yeah.
network. So I'm I'm kind of reluctant to want to divide like the mirror node and consensus node SDKs into like two separate ones just because we already have like consensus node depending on mirror node in that way. Um, so I guess
But
maybe
Rob, is that
sorry,
gRPC based or REST based?
the mirror or the address book. I actually can't remember. Avilo, do you know? Is that gRPC?
Which one? Which query?
Mirror node or address book.
Address book is mirror node one, yeah.
Yeah, is that gRPC or
Oh, it's
REST?
gRPC. But
gRPC.
the JS said basically all the SDKs use the gRPC one, but the JS one uses the REST API also.
Yeah, yeah, sure. There's a specific word, but that's why I said let's ignore the for like an architecture point of view, the JavaScript one because that is special based on limitations. But what I said, Rob, is not totally separate that. If we talk about, hey, this is gRPC, then I think it could make sense to move them more together. Then it could even be that the consensus node SDK depends on the mirror node SDK. If both use gRPC, that would be fine.
Hmm.
I think it's more problematic when you have different modules using different communication types, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we would want the well, so what could we like do something where it's like we provide like a default one um and then they provide, configuration options or like build options for the users to like if they wanted to build something different.
What I
Um
can I was playing with that. The problem is that the public API is different because from time to time you have in the public API. I mean, we could create a layer around it and to hide all that, but if you just use one of those code generators, you have in the public API language or as it's called here, server stub dependent objects, you know, that that are exposed. So what you cannot do is just say create one in any language you want and just replace the one we have with it. That will not work. You need them like we do with the TCK or whatever kind of driver or middle part for each of them because the APIs are different, the public APIs. That's I know what you think, and I tried that, it failed.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, could we like wrap it? Like I know like the code gen provides its own API, but if we like put like a wrapper around it, we could like provide our own consistency uh there. I mean, that's just adding another layer, which maybe we don't want to do. I'm just thinking through like options right
Yeah,
now.
that's that. I can totally understand what you now thinking out is exactly what I thought all about, right? And my
Yeah.
outcome was maybe the best thing is if we concentrate on gRPC for now. Because if I have a method that is called, hey, mirror node, give me, I don't know, whatever, um, and we can do an implementation in gRPC, we will have zero additional dependencies in any of the languages as we have now. For sure, it means two things. One thing is that the mirror node team need to spend work in their gRPC endpoints to have the same functionality they have for Rust in gRPC2. I would say that makes sense. If they have different technologies to connect to the mirror node, from my point of view, there should be a common amount of those are the functionalities that we provide with every endpoint. And then we can move forward with that because in that we have already knowledge and know how to provide that to the community.
Mhm. Yeah, I have a feeling that the mirror node team probably wouldn't want to go through all their endpoints and provide gRPC and REST. Yeah, I think we kind of went through that with 1261 where we were debating providing both for one. They didn't seem very interested in that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
now I'm thinking that if they're not interested in that, they're probably not going to want to do it for all of them too.
Yeah.
I think Steven didn't want to do I didn't want us to support both the gRPC one and the REST API one, so he decided that we'll use just the REST API one. Although, actually, for the address book one, we have both, but yeah, in general, they didn't want to support both the gRPC one and the REST API one.
Yeah. Another thing is we could for now say all endpoints that the consensus node SDK, so the SDK that we have today, need must be provided at gRPC. For the rest, we don't care. Because then we had a point where we could say, hey, consensus node, you can communicate with the mirror node for getting updates on the nodes if a connection fails or whatever, but always use gRPC for that. So moving forward, like we did it so far, and then in parallel, we can say, hey, and here's a mirror node SDK that is using REST, and that is, first of all, a prototype, and is individual to the other one, so that, we can have a kind of playground here.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that would make sense to kind of modularize the SDK a little bit more. And then like the main one we could provide would be like sound like I think what you call it, like this like kind of enterprise SDK.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it even comes more into play when we think about consensus block node, right? Because we have a third node where we do not have any client technology for. And what I know is mirror node just created something to get data from consensus node, right? To get data from block node. But what we need in reality is a block node SDK that then mirror node could use to access block node.
mhm.
And again, that is gRPC. So I assume that will be very similar to the consensus node SDK that we have today. Um, because it's fully gRPC. I think block node has no REST endpoint or anything here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know too much about what block nodes gonna look like. I think I remember seeing, yeah, it was like gRPC, and then I think there were like maybe four endpoints that they were looking at implementing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard too much about what exactly that's going to be though. But I guess like at that point, it's like if consensus node we're going to be primarily if we have gRPC connectivity um, on the back end there, if we're going to support that for that, like why could we just kind of put the block node functionality in that one as well? Like, will we need a separate SDK just for block node itself?
Um, Again, so what is still not 100% clear to me is version ranging. So if we would say there is one version and consensus node, React node, and mirror node have the exact same version, and we release them always together, then I would say no, why? But if we're in a way where we say, hey, this version of block node works together with this range of consensus node versions or whatever, then it might make sense to split it up. Because then you maybe want to say, hey, I have, I want this functionality which is very important for me, but I cannot update the consensus node SDK based on any concerns or any compatibility issues. So I think that is a point we need to discuss and more deeply and get more knowledge about how mirror node, consensus node, and block node work together and what the contract between them is regarding versions.
Hmm.
And I think then we can answer that question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, their version numbers now are kind of all over the place. Um, I would I would think that maybe like you just need to do like a 1.0 release and keep everything coordinated. Like that'd make it so easy. But well, I would think like even whatever versions of block node work with whatever version of consensus node. I mean, that's all they're all gonna be using the same proto buffs, right? Like it's gotta be there's gotta be some compatibility. Uh
Yeah.
like whatever is like live on, testnet, mainnet, uh like they're using the same version of the protobuf, so they would have to work with each other, right? Like whatever versions they give us, like that's got to be what works for them too.
In general, I agree. I already seen in the SDKs that kind of different versions has been used for the SDKs, and that's why I'm really a little bit picky here to first of all define all that, correct the knowledge. Like, I mean, look at our keys topic, right? How much we learned by the information we get, and how different our idea on how an API for that looks like since 1 month ago, where we do not have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And my wish is to get the same knowledge for mirror node, consensus node, block node, and what kind of contract they have, how they work together, and so on.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. So maybe let me make a note here to
I mean, what would be great is if we can get like somebody from mirror node and somebody from consensus node here in this meeting so that we can interview them and ask them questions. We could do it privately in Hashgraph, but I think it would be so good to do this in this meeting, uh,
Mhm.
so that we can ask all those questions to decide what makes sense, what don't make sense, and so on.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Let me see who I can talk to maybe to get them in next week. Or maybe not next week. Maybe like after like the end of the year. Well, we'll see who's still here and who's off.
Yeah, I mean, I I don't plan to work on Monday and Tuesday, but if we have such a meeting, I assume I can do it on Monday. Um, Yeah, maybe you just ask if people, and otherwise it will be recorded, right? So yeah, but that should be a next step to get more information on those topics.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, we can. I'll reach out and then we can coordinate on what day we want people to join. Okay. Okay, so gonna try and get people to join to continue the discussion on that. Proto buffs. So maybe maybe this is something that we can ask in that meeting too. And I know we just kind of mentioned it with block node and stuff, but I guess proto buffs for V3, like I know I feel like the topic of having another like proto buffs repo has been thrown around. And I guess just wanted to talk about a little bit more in depth here. I know this is kind of what we had for the SDKs before, where you have your SDK repo, and then for each one it would depend on or well, each of those would have their own protobufs repo, which is basically where the generated protobuf code would live, and then the SDK could just depend on that. I guess my kind of thought with protobufs here is not necessarily to do that, but I think uh, if we were to have another protobufs repo that basically pulled in, the consensus node protobufs, mirror node protobufs, and then also I know the SDKs have one of their own protobufs that we use. Um, we could have all of that in one repo, and then the SDKs could just depend on and build their protobufs from that one repo. I think that that makes a lot of sense because I think we could like have everything live there. The protobufs we don't need could be filtered out. The SDKs wouldn't have to pull in the entire consensus node repo just to get access to those protobufs. If there's any sort of like, you know, uh, manual like arranging the protobufs that need to be done, like to make dependencies work, like that could be done here in this repo. Um, yeah, I guess that's kind of my thought. Hendrik, did you have any? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you. I think the most important point is that we create guidelines in the SDK hub about how an SDK gets the protobuf, and that is the same then for every SDK, plus the same about the version. So what we
Mhm.
definitely must is to say like, hey, do not just, check out the main branch and take what is there to create it, but when doing a release for the SDKs, we must depend on a tag for the protobufs. I think things like that must be specified. Where I still have some open questions is to decide, does it make sense to have a repo for the protobufs for the SDK, like the SDK protobuf base? Or does it make more sense to, like have a script that copies them out of the text of the repos like the consensus node repo and so on. It again goes to the contract between the nodes. So if we could say, hey, today release 108 of all server components happened, we could update this SDK protobuf base repo and tag it with a tag. If the things from consensus node, from mirror node, and so on happen in different cycles, we would have a problem here again. So that is something we need to figure out. What I like is to say, hey, we only want then the protobuf that we need. Um, on the other hand, I asked myself, what kind of protobufs do exist that we don't need? If consensus node has protobuf that we don't need, means it has an endpoint no SDK is targeting, and that sounds wrong to me. So my assumption would be every protobuf that consensus node provides is needed by the SDK, and every protobuf that mirror node provides in future should be um, used by us too. Um,
I think there are some folders in here. So
yeah,
like this is the main one that what we pull. And as far as I know, pretty much the only ones we use are like services here, SDK, and Mirror. I think
yeah.
platform, all these other ones, like these are internal. Um,
Internal, interesting. Yeah, okay, yeah,
yeah.
maybe. Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm not sure
yeah,
exactly how they're used internally.
yeah.
But yeah, we have no use for them.
Okay, what I understand, and this makes sense, like if I say each of these folders is a namespace, that we drop namespaces completely. I think what would be wrong is to mutate or delete individual files. But saying like here, oh, those are like modules which depend on each other maybe and are totally separated, just throw away some of those. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I think
Yes.
those
Yeah.
so I know like in the proto buffs too, like they reference them like with this same like folder structure. So it's still looking for services slash timestamp.proto here.
Yeah, they
So
have dependencies kind of thing, right? Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Um,
So it's like we wouldn't be able to mutate too much. So I think at least in the Swift SDK, there is a script used there to uh I couldn't tell you exactly off the top of my head. I think there is some like rearranging that it has to do though to like make those dependencies work. I yeah, I can't remember exactly
yeah, yeah.
how, but basically I would think that we want all this functionality like in this repo. Like yeah, if we need to write a script to do any of that, like sure, like we can put it there. But basically I would just want the SDKs themselves to just be able to pull a tag off this repo and then build and work.
Do the folders here have a readme.md or something so that we know what a folder if you no if you go to like
Uh,
into
or
SDK,
that
okay, that don't have
I think these just have the proto files.
yeah, okay. So I think what is needed then is a documentation of the folders. I mean, the files internally have a very good documentation now. But
Mhm.
what are those folders? What is the use case of each of those folders? That is totally missing. So that is something we should try to move forward and get the different projects to work on that because then I totally agree. We know what we need, what we can delete, and so on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess just kind of resaying like the kind of what I want is just to have something that all the SDKs can pull from, and it just they're able to run their protoc and just build
Yeah.
and work.
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's some manual work being done in each SDK right now to get those to work.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, so I think would well back to the point you made about versioning. I guess would we need to I guess if we had this additional protobufs repo, would we need to match the versions in any way? I guess what I'm thinking is like if we, we're going to need to keep track of like the services and the mirror node tags that we're pulling from. I guess it's like what would stop us from like for example, like if mirror node had a new tag, like being able or just pulling that in to this protobufs repo and then just like tagging those versions together. Like so each like tag in the protobufs repo would like basically just have like a services version and a mirror node version.
And
Um,
so, yeah, I understand what you mean. Maybe one question. The mirror folder that I'm seeing here, is that defining how the mirror node can access the consensus node, or is that defining an endpoint of the mirror node? That is defining an endpoint of consensus node, right?
uh, I believe this is mirror node. I'm not exactly sure if this because I think Mirror Node has their own protobufs,
Yeah, yeah.
but we, as far as I know, don't pull those in ourselves. I think we kind of just copy paste those into the repos themselves, which that would be another problem solved
Yeah,
with this.
yeah, and I mean, maybe let's say like in worst case, yeah, that works now and breaks tomorrow. I cannot say it, right?
Right.
So that is why I asked those questions and say, hey, let's really double check it because I'm currently checking. Mirror Node has their own protobuf. They look very, very similar to what I see here. And now I ask myself, what is the truth? Right? Because this mirror folder has been updated 10 months ago. The one in the mirror node repo has been updated 5 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't think this is used here.
Yeah. So we need to check that. And maybe if that is not used, maybe nobody knows today and we should delete it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that is what I would like to do to make all that clear before we move forward here.
Yeah. Uh, and make a note of that too. Figure out where protobufs actually live and where we should be pulling them from. Um, but yeah, so if we were to have to pull protobufs from multiple places, yeah, we basically in this repo have to pull in, yeah, consensus node, mirror node, and there would be some rearranging that would have to be done just to make sure that the file paths all match up and like if we need to take like the mirror folder from mirror node and then copy and paste it into wherever we would want to build these from like yeah it would basically need to be like a sort of like a pick and
Yeah,
choose just to make it all line up
makes
but
sense. Yeah.
yeah.
We can just
Uh,
plug them.
we way out of time for Sophie, what I'm just seeing. We
Oh yeah.
have said, hey, it's my time.
Yeah, sorry. I did we want to go through the first little bit, Sophie, or would you want to wait till next time? I'm fine going a little over myself.
Me too.
Is there anything else that you would like to discuss?
We have the keys topic here that could take hours. So
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with key, like I think I
Okay.
still haven't been able to look into the crypto libraries like I wanted to.
yeah.
So I know, Hendrik, you've done some kind of modifications on that. So I guess if you wanted to go over that, we could, or
So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, we could. I mean, I'm fine to skip keys to next year. I think we've set it up a good base and can continue it next year. So Sophie, if you want to have the last 9 minutes, sorry that it's 6 minutes less than
No,
we
I'd love
decided.
to.
Go forward. Otherwise, I can talk about keys. Up to you.
I really welcome the opportunity to talk about it. Maybe I will do it slightly back to front and everything so that I
Okay.
can get the key points
sure.
down. Could I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. So I've been working on good first issues a lot in the Python SDK, and have learned some wonderful lessons. And there's also lots of challenges that we've had to do while doing this. And we've solved a lot of them. But in Hiero, we have a lack of good first issue candidates or good first issues in the SDKs. So quite a lot of them just have zero in terms of the SDKs, or just like 4 good first issues, 1 good first issue, 1 good first issue, this kind of thing. So we have a real lack of engagement with good first issues. Having experienced what a good first issue involves, it is easy to find it all overwhelming and everything. What we have done is improve the templates, so it's easier to create a good first issue, it's more detailed. But really what I would like to propose is the expansion of a good first issue committee with a workflow where they gain more ability to refine good first issues, maybe even create the good first issues. But that is quite a sensitive process, and it's going to require some thinking about how that will be done. So the goal is to offset as much time as possible from the maintainers, to make sure that it's as easy as possible to do good first issues. And the second thing I'm going to propose is we have explicit opt-in from SDKs that want to do the good first issues, because they're not for everyone. Okay, so what I'm going to propose is not that. Yeah, I'm going to propose 4 key steps. A good first issue committee is going to be a cross SDK committee. And what it will enable the committee to do is these 4 key steps. Obviously, this is all debatable. So the first key step is to be able to set up a good first issue. This is probably the most important one. This is going to be do you want to offer good first issues in your SDK? We have a conversation with the maintainers, the committees. They can say yes, or they can say no. But if they do say yes, we then go, okay, we will help you to create the supporting documentation for that. So we will help to make sure the template in your SDK for a good first issue candidate is excellent. We will make sure that you have clear requirements of what you consider a good first issue. And that will then enable the good first issue committee to create issues, good first issue candidates, subject to your specific requirements. If you say, I only want 2 good first issues every month, then we can make just 2 good first issues every month. So it doesn't have to be like all or nothing. It could just be, yeah, I'm kind of interested, but I don't have the capacity fully to take on so many new starters. I just want to do 1 a week or something like that. And then the good first issue committee will help create these candidates based on what you require. They will then also help with the assignment. So one of the issues that we have is I created some good first issues. People were asking, I want to be involved. Okay, I'm not going to be able to find it in when I'm going quickly. I want to work on this good first issue candidates. I had 3 people over the last 2 days ask for that. And assignment in some cases has not even occurred. In some cases, the pull request has happened and they haven't been reviewed, which is normal. But for a good first, for a new starter, when they're excited, when they feel a little bit nervous going into this whole new world, they want to feel the support, and it's important to them. So the good first issue committee would have triage responsibilities that can assign people. Remember, we have this documentation that says very clearly what is appropriate for the SDK, what the SDK wants. We could even create workflows in the Python SDK. We are building a workflow that automatically assigns a mentor. And that could be, for example, from the good first issue committee, or if you want, that could be from a committee in the SDK itself. And then they can also soft approve the issues. They have triage abilities they can approve. It doesn't count, but it serves as a soft check to be like, okay, we've worked with this new starter, we've mentored them. They've gone over the finish line. We think that this is good. It resolves the issue brought up. And now the idea is this reduces the maintainer load. And the Good First Issue Committee develops some really, really excellent skills at creating good first issues and everything like that. So it definitely, in my opinion, can be rolled out cross SDK, even though the code is different, because good first issues tend to be examples, tend to be things like this. Yeah. So that is kind of my proposal. That's all I have to talk about, really. Hendrik.
Hey, I already said you earlier when I looked at it, I like it. Maybe especially at the last slide where you talked about the 95% of less time. I would like to make it more clear in this text that this do not, solve 95% of the work of a maintainer, but only for the good first issue topic, right? And the other thing is, I like this initiative. I think that goes absolutely in the right direction. And for me, it makes sense and it's the right way to say, hey, here we have a group that take care about good first issue, that maybe move that for guidelines, for strategy up to a next level. All that is great. I assume you said it a little bit too easy for SDK maintainers because um, in your pitch, it feels like, and you as an SDK maintainer don't need to do anything at all anymore. And my wish would be to say, yeah, we have this committee, and it would be great if somebody of you attends that committee so that we have people from all the different SDKs, independent if you're a maintainer or committer or whatever, in that committee because even if good first issues are mostly samples, are mostly here's a documentation missing, here's a test missing, you need to document the good first issues in a really good way, a good understanding of the language. And here my wish would be to have in the committee people who really know the programming language. For those, the committee is creating good first issues.
I don't view it as there's little time that maintainers are investing in this. It's not too much either. I think it's a nice middle ground. So most of the time for the maintainers will be invested in the initial setup, where we really learn, do you want a good first issue? What does that look like for you? How frequent can you support people doing these good first issues? What kind of time frame? So it is kind of forming more of a connection with the community. What maybe I disagree with is they should be part of the good first issue committee itself, because I view it as good first issue starters. Like they still need quite a bit of support, and you really need to like have hands-on help all the time cross SDKs maybe. So I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, but the initial investment I think is good, and then towards the end they always can engage with the good first issues as well at any point, and at the end as well, Rob.
Yeah, so I think like maintainers like the in-depth knowledge of a repo that like the maintainers have, like it can be helpful, but I think for like good first issues, like I mean, good first issues are meant to be like pretty basic and not too like in depth. So I think like if we did have like a good first issue like committee of some sort, like there obviously the people on the committee would need some knowledge of like what the like what of each programming language. I don't really believe they would need too much though. Like if it was like something like just like doing like an example, coming up with an example, like there that I don't even know like well they
It
would need
won't
to know.
even be coming up with an example. That's generally too hard.
Right.
It will just be
Uh,
like, in this example, add one function.
right, exactly. Yeah, so it's like any kind of like advanced, I feel like language specific like topic like wouldn't necessarily apply in that case. So I think I with that I feel like I'd be comfortable like having non-maintainers like be a part of that group. But like yeah, like obviously a cursory knowledge would be required, but nothing you know like
Yeah,
crazy.
but that is what I mean. So I'm not, and that's why I said it don't need to be a maintainer, right? So, and I'm fine with having somebody, let's say, like in the group who says, "Oh, I can read Go and I understand Go and I have a good understanding of Go." So I, from my point, have never written one line of Go code, and I cannot create a good first issue for Go. And with that, I cannot create a good first issue for the Go SDK because there are so much differences between Go and Python that a good first issue that is created in Python might not make much sense for Go. Especially when it comes to the samples and things like that, that part of the good first issue.
Yeah.
Once we have a lot of them and you can reference to others, I assume it's getting easier. But at the beginning, I'm very sure that you need somebody that has a good understanding of the programming language.
So Angie and I, we spent a couple of hours making good first issues, which were like add comments, like explain it. This file is just has no explanation.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that everybody can do. I agree. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think
Yeah,
there's so many good first issues that you can propose based
yeah.
on the level of comfort that you have with the programming language. But I agree with you that you shouldn't be proposing things that you have no idea about.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that is my fear, where we should not end. Yeah,
Furthermore, remember we would have to discuss with the maintainers themselves to be, what is an appropriate good first issue for you.
yeah,
So we could always suggest, okay, we like good first issues that are adding comments and examples. Is that something that's correct from your point of view? And we will find something that we can do.
yeah,
I
My
kind of like that model
question,
too,
yeah,
where it's just like the committee would just be to come up with like good first issue like proposals. Like here's what we like, and then take that to the maintainers. It can literally take like 10-15 minutes. Be like, here's what we came up with. Like, what do you think? And then if they have any like edits or modifications, then it's like we can make those. Or any
yeah.
further explanation that they have or would want to provide. Yeah, I like that. I think that makes sense.
I the one thing that I'm not so sure about is which SDK is most likely to want good first issues, and then how can we contact them? So if we do want to move this forward, my opinion would be, okay, we can't just create good first issues in an SDK and assume it will be taken up and the permissions will change to triage and things like this. We need to kind of have these conversations with them as well. Like, are there any SDKs that we already know do want to engage with the good first issues? As mentioned, it could be like once a month.
I mean, we can have a look at what people are interested in contribute, first of all. So I, for example, can say, I'm happy to create good first issues in the Java SDK. Absolutely no problem with that. Um, maybe Rob is saying, yeah, I would like to contribute, and I can do the same for C++ and Swift. And you can do it for Python, and maybe you take another one. And then we already have a very good start. So we don't need to start with 100% of all SDKs. Even if we start with 4 or 5 SDKs, and then end February, we see it's working, then we can onboard the other SDKs as an example. So maybe we just start with the one we are comfortable with.
Yeah, so Angie and I, we created 2 good first issues for the JavaScript, Java, Go, and maybe another one. But the engagement, people have been wanting to work on it, but the engagement hasn't been good enough. So what I would really need is to talk with the maintainers and because we need to negotiate permission changes. Do you really want this good first issue committee? Do you want it to have triage responsibilities
Yep.
and it will do
Yep.
this and this and this? And then we have this expectation that, okay, somebody said I want to work on this issue. I immediately commented, I would love to assign you, but I can't CC this maintainer and things. So and then another time you were faster, Hendrik, I think. So that's what like if you are confident that the Go SDK, for example, wants to participate in that, I would break that down to, let's have a conversation, let's see what the triage role would involve for your SDK, and then because engagement is much more important for good first issues rather than just creating them, getting people
Yep.
asking to be assigned, and then just never really being able to get anything approved or assigned to them.
So I'm just looking at the good first issue candidates that you created for the Java SDK, and they look good. I totally like that. Um, I think that is a very good start. I'm happy to move them to good first issues now if you want to. The other thing is I'm just looking as an example just for the Java SDK, who's a maintainer.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Emo and Banco.
Yeah, and Simi and 2 people I don't know. So that's maybe we should. I need to become
So,
a committer of the Java SDK.
so my thought is I could reach out to the maintainers today, and maybe we could kind of discuss this in the good first issue call tomorrow. And I can do my best to get them to join, and then
Yeah,
see if we can get buy-in from them.
Yeah,
Uh,
fantastic,
tomorrow.
fantastic. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we get the approval from the Python SDK Good First Issue Committee as well, so we can give them an example.
yeah. I as said, I think I approved it, but I said I want another approval, right? Is there any?
Yeah, Nadine is working on it. I need to change the wording as well, so I think we'll need
Ah,
another
yeah. Okay.
another
Yeah.
pass at it.
Okay. Okay. So just ping me when you need a review again on it. I'm happy to move it forward. Um, but I would say even without the approval of that one, the meeting will make sense, and we have more than enough to show to people. Um, so yeah, let's try to invite for some SDKs. Which one would you prefer? So I would really like to take Java in it, because I can help there and I'm committed to help. Um, can we get
Yeah,
a few
I
more
think.
where we say, yeah, let's work on those?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just gonna send a message to the whole team,
Yeah.
and yeah, just cast a wide net and see what we catch.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank you so
And
much.
then,
Also, like if anybody would want to share their contact details with me, like that would also be appreciated. But great. So I look forward to the meeting tomorrow.
cool.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, yeah. Good meeting everyone. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
See
All right,
you.
Bye.
bye.